concentrate just on on the lawyers. Surely the point of a legal aid system is actually to help the clients. Isn't the clients right at the heart of this?
I've not been at a young legal aid lawyers meeting and seen so many hands, so, but Jude first.
Well, Lord Bart, can I firstly summarise what you've just said very succinctly? I think it's one word, isn't it? It's called exploitation. Remind you that being accepting doesn't mean accepting the unacceptable. And I think we need to bear that in mind as well. We have some very dedicated, very bright young lawyers in this audience. Why should they accept anything less when compared with other commensurate professions? Because, for example, they're working with sectors in society that the public don't have much sympathy for. And you've referred to crime as taking most of the budget. Can I ask you to explore the reason for that? The wastage that goes on in crime? Absolutely. Nothing to do with legal aid practitioners, Lord Bark. Come to a police station with my partner and watch what goes on with the Crown Prosecution Service and the inefficiency with other agencies. That is what is draining legal aid. Yeah.
I want to take some of these hands. Yes.
Can I just get this straight on the Tory manifesto regarding legal aid? Basically, you're suggesting a return to charity to assist those who are most in need in our population, relying on people who aren't dedicated professionals, who may not necessarily be bound to serve. And you're suggesting that we're going to carry on, as my learned friend said, being exploited.
Certainly not. No, I made it crystal clear that all the improvements that Willie Bark has spoken about, which I don't necessarily believe are going to take place, we are going to move ahead with those improvements, and we're going to bring new money in. I simply made the point that if 51% of lawyers are not doing pro bono work, that is a way of bringing more expertise into the equation. And the idea of the French system, Willie, if you add, my system is an add-on. So we keep the 2.1 billion, but if we can add another 300 or 400 million onto the budget, that is a very, very large amount of money. And it could make a radical difference to access to justice.
Here with the...
You didn't listen to what I asked.
I just want to ask about the French system and getting money back from that way. Are you going to put it into an Icelandic bank?
Actually, it's an important point of that, because there were solicitors, time and time, funds that were with Icelandic banks. One or two very small examples, but there were some examples of Icelandic bank time account monies. This is going to be a government in France. It's a government-backed bank account, and it's guaranteed by the French government. And in fact, all of France's money for legal aid comes from this particular source. Of course they only spend a small amount on legal aid because they haven't got the 2.1 billion. What I'm talking about is looking at a very large number of ideas to add to what we're spending already, which will mean that we'll get real terms increases over the period of a parliament. If we don't look at these radical, exciting, imaginative ideas, we're going to stand still. We're going to be shifting chairs on a sinking vessel. And like Willie, if we do win the election, it is the chance they're going to ring me up and say, Henry, fantastic, here is another billion for legal aid. Is he going to say that? I wish he would say that. But we've got to live in the real world.
Hi. I'd like to make a distinction. There's a difference between protecting the vulnerable as a charitable purpose and protecting the vulnerable for the sake of society. Protecting the vulnerable is a fundamental, or access to justice is a fundamental part of democracy.
Thank you very much. And I'm getting to pick it up. I want to take one more young person. I can see wistful geezers here, but I don't see one more young person. Are you young enough to be young? I hope so.
I've got a quick question for the Minister. Should salary be deterrent to public service? Would you ask the General Medical Council, the Police Federation, with the fact that they're public servants, they should accept a lower wage? I don't think so. You've got to look at young legal aid lawyers as public servants. We are working on behalf of the most vulnerable members of society.
I think that's a very fair point. I think the point I'm trying to make is that those who do legal aid work don't expect to get, never did when they entered legal aid, I certainly didn't, the kind of wages, salary that you would get if you were just doing private law. That's the truth of the matter. You're saying that you don't get enough anyway, and I understand that. It does seem to me, I mean, I absolutely agree with what the QC had to say about, which I'm afraid I never made, what the QC had to say about crime. I spend my life arguing that the criminal legal aid system needs absolute change and alteration. Because the criminal justice system is so inefficient in this country. You mentioned police stations. I'm going to talk about Crown Court. The Crown Court system is ridiculous. The money we waste on the Crown Court system, legal aid money, because of adjournments, because of everything else that could be spent, frankly, on the kind of law I think most of us want to spend that money on.
But think
and that's one thing
what a vivid account you could give if you were to go with her to a police station, take it to the House of Lords and put it out there on the carpet. That's the invitation.
Let me think about that. What I just wanted to say was that the McGee review that we've set up this week, and it's actually, I think, quite an important event, is considering whether we should split the fund, the legal aid fund, between criminal legal aid and civil legal aid into two quite separate funds. Why? Why are we thinking about doing this and asking Sir Ian McGee to have a judgment on this? Because as night follows day, criminal legal aid, which is demand-led, swallows up, or tends to swallow up, civil legal aid. It's what happens. Civil legal aid is discretionary, criminal legal aid is demand-led and compulsory. That's why we want him to consider, and for us to make a decision, as to whether in the future, and there are people who've argued this for many years, these two funds should be separate. And I think if the two funds are separate, it gives civil legal aid a chance.
Well, you'll be glad to hear I got a degree of harmonious experience on the left and on the right, and they both agree with this idea. Kat?
Just want to pick up briefly on a point that the Minister made, suggesting that young professionals should go into the career and go into this field out of the goodness of our hearts. No. And I think there's a real difficulty. Well, that's pretty much what it came down to, Minister. You're suggesting that we should do it because it's a vocation. Yes. And if I go back to the question that Sarah put, for the last question that came up, unfortunately, a career in legal aid is increasingly the preserve of the rich. The only people who can now enter the career are people who have parents who can fund them. We're looking at top-up fees, costs of potentially a postgraduate degree, the LPC, the BBC. Students are facing over £50,000 of debt and then go into a career in their first year and earn about £18,000 a year. No wonder that we risk going back on all the achievements we've made so far, and in 20 years' time, our judiciary and our profession will be as pale, male, stale and posh as it was 20 years ago. And the needs of our clients. The two are inseparable, and it's a little bit unfair, considering your relationship with young legal aid lawyers, to suggest that we're here just to ask for more money for ourselves. We want a properly funded system so that our clients get a proper service.